It's my pleasure to introduce Joe Dupre, who's going to talk to us about security. Let's welcome him.
Thank you. And we're going to talk about a security program development, developing a comprehensive security program for the enterprise. It's not going to be a very technical as far as, what kind of bugs will do what and how they operate, or even putting controls in place or anything like that, or countermeasures. It's just how to develop a security program and the workings of a security program in an enterprise. And let's see how this works. Not well. Okay, so why information security? Good information is crucial in making good decisions. So for strategy, helping to create strategy, and for developing product, or anything that you're doing in your organization, you need good information. Also, there's potential for civil and legal liabilities. For instance, Sarbanes-Oxley, HIPAA, PCI DSS, that's payment card industry data security standard, and assurance of policy compliance. So your organization will have policies in place. You want to assure that there's compliance to those policies. Structure of IS resources, information security resources. You want governance. You want to be able to structure those resources in a certain way and get your resources together and have those available. And improving trust with not only within your organization but also with your customers. You're protecting your reputation. So you've heard about all those credit card breaches or social security number breaches, and then the company loses a lot of customers because they're not trusted. And then providing accountability. So the hierarchy of information. First you have data, and I'll just give you an example here. So first is data, red. That's a piece of data, is red. Information would be the ball is red. So you have adjective and a noun. And then you have knowledge. The ball was red because Pat threw the ball into Don's face, gave him a bloody nose. They got into a fight, and because Don did a counter attack, and then they got in big trouble. Their parents want to sue each other, and then also all those other things. So that would be knowledge. So you have the data, red, information, ball is red, knowledge, all the stuff that happened in the incident. And then you have wisdom. What do you get out of that? Can anybody tell us what is the moral of this story? Don't what?
Avoid red ball.
Well, the ball is red because he got a bloody nose and bled all over it. So the moral of the story is either play nice on the playground, learn to duck, and and anticipate that sort of thing on the playground, or if there's a lawsuit involved, possibly get liability insurance if you're going to do risky activity. So that's the hierarchy of data. So you do see that at the top there's wisdom, and that's what we want to protect. And to have wisdom, you have to have good data. You have to have good information, and you have to have good knowledge. And it all starts in any of these layers. It can the information and the data can be diddled or changed, and affecting your ability to make wise decisions. So outcomes of IS governance, you would have a strategic alignment to the business. So what does the business want to accomplish, whether it's sell more, break into a new market, or what's the biggest these days, reducing costs, Then there's risk and developing new technologies, that sort of thing. That would be a strategic alignment. So you want to align your information security efforts around that, around whatever the business goals are. And we'll get a little bit more into that. Then there's risk management. That's finding out what are the risks out there and try to reduce those risks as much as possible. There's value delivery. What are you doing to create value for the organization besides just, well, yeah, you are reducing risk, you're also reducing costs. Well, risks, as you'll see, is related to costs, but ultimately you want to be able to do it really cheap and not waste resources. And that brings us to resource management, and assurance process integration, and performance measurement. Assurance process integration is when you have multiple organizations providing this assurance. So you might have HR doing efforts in information assurance, for instance, reducing the risk of liability because people are saying bad things about each other. So they go to training to learn how to speak respectfully or something like that. Or HR may intervene in a conflict. Same thing with legal. Legal and HR will talk together. Legal will say, well, we don't think this is really a risk, so just let it go, or escalate your efforts a little bit more. And then there's the information security. There's IT vulnerabilities and systems, and that sort of thing. Now and then there's performance measures. Performance measurements, we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But it's not really just measuring how many systems are patched and that sort of thing. So you want to, strategic alignment, you want to ensure that the defined business objectives provide the ongoing input to guide security activities. So in order to do that, you create governing security policies that address each aspect of to security controls and regulations. These policies are usually broad, and they don't change over 2 or 3 years or something like that, or more. And then you have your standards. Those can change a little bit more often, maybe once a year, and they're always being updated. Those are specific a little bit more to the business and at a lower level. Procedures. Those are security procedures. So what do you do when there's an incident, security incident? And then there's guidelines as well. Then you also want to make sure that you avoid conflict of interest with sufficient, and also have sufficient authority and adequate resources. So your strategic alignment will do, that's one of the functions of your strategic alignment. And then institutionalizing metrics and monitoring processes to ensure compliance and provide feedback on effectiveness. So are you doing what you said you were going to do, and how well is it actually doing it, that sort of thing. So the roles, the board of directors and senior management, they do the strategic direction. So for instance, the Chancellor Reed told the president that one of his goals was to finish the Green Music Center, and also to continue with diversity in the university. So they provide strategic direction. And then there's also all these other directives that we get from the president, which include information security, regarding retention policies, other policies, information security policies themselves, about passwords and developing programs, and each campus having an IS information security officer. So there's all these things that go along. And they help assign resources and assign IS manager here on campus. That would be the vice president and the president would assign the resources and assign IS, make sure that a manager is assigned. The executive manager is an organizational leader. So he's the one that gets different organization, heads of different organizations together to work together. And then you have steering committee. That's a group of stakeholders. So everybody, a stakeholder is like a data user, someone who actually uses the data, or the data owner, or anybody that has a stake with a certain information system. So, for instance, PeopleSoft. HR needs it, students need it, teachers need it, so it's best to have a steering committee with representatives of all those members in that committee. And then there's the ISO, or the Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO. He's the person managing the IS program. In our case, that would be, is that okay? That would be Barry Blackburn. He's our Information Security Officer for the campus. He works with the executive management and the board of directors. And what we do, and I work with him, and what we do is we do risk assessments and manage information security as best we can. And I'll show you a little bit more on how that's done. Manage risk to acceptable levels. Risk management. We have incident response, business impact assessments, business continuity planning, risk assessments. So we go around campus looking for things that, or you can go in any organization. You go around and try to discover risks, things that'll cost the company money, that'll undermine their goals and objectives, and you try to mitigate those risks. And it usually has to do with information security or information systems, and a lot of it has to do with information systems. So an incident so one of the things that we do, so that's the risk assessments actually. We're talking about risk assessments right now. So risk is actually a threat, vulnerability, and the frequency of that happening, of a threat, exploiting the vulnerability, and the frequency of that happening. So a threat agent could be a bot. It could be someone who wants to get some information to compete or prevent you from achieving your goals. A vulnerability, of course, is anything that can be exploited that has value, that can expose something of value, and then the frequency, how many times a year. So you can't put money into those equations and come out with, especially for compliance type stuff like PCI DSS. If we know there's certain fines and how much those fines are, that sort of thing. And then you find out your vulnerabilities. And there's always a threat out there. That's the thing. With when you have information systems, there's what, 2 billion computers on the internet now? Is that about it? 2 billion? How many of those want to break into your computer? 1%? 0.1%? 0.01%? Well, that might be 100,000 to 1 million computers. That's a lot of computers that want to break into someone's computer. If you have if they identify it as something of value. So there's always a threat out there if there's something of value on a computer, especially if it has access to the internet. And part of that is, so we have incident response also. I put that into risk management as well, because incident response, well, we're managing risk as well. Actually, you're managing something that's already been exploited, something that has already happened. There's been an event, and we need to do something about it, mitigate the risk, and then possibly do architectural redesign or something to mitigate or out of control or do execute a countermeasure. There's business impact assessments. So that's part of can be rolled up in a risk assessment and actually incident response too. Business impact assessments, they tell us what would happen if a certain system went down, or what would happen if an earthquake happened and this building collapsed, or of a magnitude of certain, and what kind of impact would that have on the business. And part of that is the rate of recovery, the recovery time objectives. How long can the business be without the system or the building or whatever it is? It's the information system, whether it's index cards or whatever, or a computer system. How long can they be without it, until they actually go under, or the business can no longer exist? And then there's a good business continuity planning. So what do you do once a catastrophe happens? So whether you have backups, you have redundant storage already, or you have a hot site, a cold site, or a warm site. Hot site would be a data center that's already set up with all the computers and software and everything, and all you have to do is restore and that also has the data, so it's a mirrored data center. A warm site would be a site with a bunch of computers on it that aren't configured but are there for your use when you need them. And then a cold site, of course, would be maybe some computers, but you'd have to get a whole bunch of other computers to actually recreate everything. And then you go by your different scenarios and you decide what is most appropriate for your business needs. Assessments and management must be ongoing while developing a security program. So the incident response, so while all this stuff is happening, you're doing the business impact assessments and continuity planning and risk assessments. While you're running 100 miles an hour, you're also trying to manage the program, and that's reporting to management on the progress that you're making and in the security program, whether projects and initiatives are on time, on budget, that sort of thing. So it's quite a juggling act. Value delivery. So one of the major values is that we deliver the required levels of controls and risk management effectively, and we do risk management effectively and efficiently. Well executed security program includes good planning, project management, and low cost. You don't want to start spending a lot of money because most of the stuff you can just change the way you do things, and the systems are already there. And also, you don't want to whenever you put controls in place, it has a tendency to possibly create a security risk somewhere else, or denial of service. So, and a lot of time when we're providing that value, we're doing cost-benefit analysis. How much does it cost to put in a control or a system or change a process, and how much does it save once you put it in, that sort of thing. And it's not easy to do that, and a lot of times it's just a figure in the air. It seems like it, especially if you do a return on investment type of things where you're calculating the annual loss expectancy. That's how often that something's going to happen that'll impact the business. A lot of those things are just you're guessing and you're thinking there's a probability of it. It's not real, but it's something that you can utilize. But it's not the best way of going. It's best to be able to say, oh, well, if we put in this new system, it's going to cost a lot less. We'll have a lot more functionality. People will be more productive, and that's usually where you get most of your value from. So resource management, there's people, technology, and processes. Planning and managing to utilize resources optimally. So there's timing. You don't want to. So we time our security projects. We try to time them over a year, or do a year's worth of planning at a time, or a quarter to a year of planning, or half a year of planning, whatever. And then you time them because you don't want everybody. You don't want to hijack the entire IT department or the entire finance department and get them working on everything all at the same time, because they have their own work to do, and they have to be productive. So what we try to do is stagger, make a plan of what we're going to do for a year, and then we plan it out, and then we execute on that plan, and keep it in mind to one, leverage off synergies of projects and people, and then also we want to pace it out so people don't have to think about everything all the time. They know they only have to think about this project for this few hours at this time, and then they can move on to the next thing. Product and process selection. That's what AV system do you put in? What data loss protection program do you put in? Which encryption programs do you put in? That sort of thing. And then process selection also. You already have the systems in place. So, for instance, email retention. Do you put limits on the life of the email and make sure you can, and put a flag to delete it automatically in the system when it needs to be deleted, that sort of thing. Acquire personnel with appropriate skills. So that's hiring people. If you identify when you do your resource management, and you're looking at the available skills you have for your organization, you'll identify things that you don't have. And those are the things that you want, and you have to get them somehow. So you either hire them, or you provide needed training for people that are interested in doing that, or who have the capability of doing it, or whatever. So that's resource management. Assurance process integration. Develop or enhance processes directly or indirectly. So what we're doing there is we want to assure that assure the processes are being leveraged to the best of their ability, and that we're not overlapping efforts. So, for instance, one group may be doing training, information security awareness training, and then we're doing it too. Well, how do those overlap? Do we really both need to be doing it, or maybe they do need to be doing it because theirs is more in depth on one particular subject or something like that. And there's a lot, like we said before, there's a lot of organizations that can be overlapping what they do. So, information security office may be looking at laws and regulations and stuff like that. Well, the lawyers are always looking at that stuff as well, and so is HR. So there are synergies, and they're in charge of their laws, the laws that affect them. And so we don't want them to overlap, so it's a good idea to make a map of the different efforts of everybody that's doing things in your enterprise or organization, and make sure that you don't overlap. Let's see, create links and then you also want to create links and relationships with other assurance providers that are complementary to information security. So that would be audit, human resources, risk management, physical. A lot of times risk management, those are the people that, when there's problems with employees or something like that. Physical security, police department could be physical security or just security guards. Privacy, compliance, quality assurance, and then the help desk, there's IT. Within IT, there's usually security people who are doing the security and on the systems whose specific task is to do certain security things, or design, or to assure security in the system. So we want to make sure we have connection with all those groups, and that we're not doing the same thing as they are. And we also want to make sure that we get their reports so we can manage the entire thing. Performance measurement. Yeah, developing important monitoring and metrics requirements. So, what is an important monitoring and metric? Is it how many clients have AV on it, or how many clients have patches? It could be, but that's not going to tell you how secure your enterprise is. It's maybe one indicator, but it's not everything. One thing that's often difficult to do is for an IT department, if there's a lot of clients out there that are not managed by the IT department, how do you manage that risk? And how do you measure that? And how do you find out who they are, where they are, what they're doing, and what they're running, and that sort of thing. So, a big problem in any large enterprise. But some good ones would be the time it takes to detect and report security-related incidents, number and frequency of subsequently discovered unreported incidents, so you found out a month later that there was an incident you didn't know about. So you would want to know how many and how often that happens, how many a year. Benchmarking comparable organizations for cost and effectiveness. So an enterprise of 20,000 people, how much does another organization of a similar type, like a manufacturing of electronic goods or something like that, how much do they spend on their information security organization? Clear indications that security. You also want metrics that indicate that the security objectives are being met, so you've already got your approval from management to go ahead with your program, and now you have to measure whether those projects are being delivered, and if they're being delivered on time and on budget. You'll also want to possibly have the knowledge of impending threats. Methods of tracking evolving risk, consistency of log review practices. And a lot of these actually have to do with control points. So you have a standard like ISO 17799 or 27001, and or PCI DSS or one of these other standards, and then you have control points that indicate that the control of the objective is being met. So say you want antivirus and hardening of the workstations. So you have to find that word. How do you find that out? Well, you go to this system, you look at that page of that display on the system in a particular program, and it tells you the management of the systems and how many are compliant or not. Okay, so that's one control point. Or you need to know if you're running the latest version of Linux, you bring up an Xterm window and then type ver or whatever it is for Linux, and then that's a control point. So you want to measure those, and then find out how many are not compliant, what the impact is if they're not compliant. Is it a big serious risk? Is it not? You have to measure all that, and even then, are you really saying that you're secure? Maybe, maybe not, but you're at least saying that you have a program in place, and we know that when an enterprise has a program in place, they're 70% less likely to be hacked, to have security incidents, and that sort of thing. So you may not even be that secure. You can maybe still be vulnerable, but you're managing it, and you know how long it takes you to find out if there's a security incident happened, and hopefully you know if you don't find out about a security incident after you might be able to find out after the fact. Incident response. So we prepare, improve, and sustain, protect infrastructure, implement protections. When we detect events, identify unusual, suspicious activities, we triage events, prioritizing events. If you have multiple events coming in at one time, you want to decide what is of high value and what is not. And then you want to respond. You want technical controls that need to be put into place, rebuilding workstations or firewall rules or IPS rules, and then there's management. Should management do something? Do they need to reorganize, or do they need to follow through? Do they need to assign resources to help out with that event? Legal, if there's notifications required to the media or to people who are affected by the data breach. So there's all these things that are involved. So we want to protect, detect, triage, and respond. And then one of the big things is training. If there's an effective security awareness training, you can decrease your risks by up to about 63 or 64%. And there was a study done by the U.S. Military Regional Computer Emergency Response Team, that's the RCERT in Europe, from 1994 to 2002. Humans were the weakest link in the security chain. Once they were taught value of the assets, the risks, and then they took actions to protect it. So they became aware. They were trained on security issues and procedures, and this allowed the RCERT to lower their reaction time because everybody knew what to do when something happened, and were able to identify when something happened, instead of just like, oh well, the thing popped up on my computer and it became slow. Oh well, but now they knew what to do because they had the training and that sort of thing. And there's different levels of training. So there is information security awareness training, and then there's in-depth trainings that people, engineers and accountants, and information security people, IT people, programmers, and more IT and process people, and facilities building engineers, SCADA systems. Those are the ones that, the electric company, sewage companies, water company. So each one, we have to identify specific people that need in-depth training, and they need to get that training, and maybe we need to make sure that they have that training. So a lot of you guys are engineers, or a lot of you folks are engineers here, right? So you would do probably programming and that sort of thing. So OWASP would be the big thing there, and then probably IT security because it's computer related. Okay, well, this is the COVID and IT governance and COVID framework. It's a picture of the framework. So you have your control objectives. You have IT here, and the business goals are feeding into the control objectives. The governance, that's the board, is feeding into, they have their responsibilities and they're feeding into the control objectives. The board doesn't want to go to jail because of SOX are blaming SOX, or they want to reduce liabilities for the organization. The business goals are kind of self-feeding as well. They want to build the product. They want to direct the engineers to build products, certain types of products, and go for certain markets. They want to give the information to the marketing people to sell and outflank the competition. And so that feeds into control objectives. And then IT needs to assure that that information that feeds back into the governance, the board, and the business leaders. IT needs, and information security needs to assure that the information that they're getting, because they get all their information, almost a lot of it, from computer systems, right? What's being sold, supply chain, what can they get, what can they not get, that sort of thing. And they need good information. They need to know whether they need to change vendors or change manufacturers of certain components and that sort of thing, or they need to know the marketing people, the salesmen need to know whether they need to visit certain areas and concentrate on certain areas if there's a need. And they have all these feelers out and they're trying to gather information. We need to make sure that that little piece of data, that little red or white or blue or whatever that data is really what it claims to be. And so it feeds back into them, and then they give us the requirements and the direction and resourcing. And so that's IT governance. So, and the things that we really want to know are we doing the right things? Are we doing them the right way? Are we getting them done well? And are we getting the benefits from our efforts? And then controls are policies, procedures, practices, and organizational structures designed to provide reasonable assurance that business objectives will be achieved and that undesired events will be prevented or detected and corrected. And that brings a conclusion to this talk. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
As you've gone through this, you've talked about the business, and you've given examples of essentially manufacturing and engineering and stuff like that. How do you have to adapt this to work with what is a public institution of education?
Well, you find out what the business objectives are. So, and the business objectives are coming from the teachers, the vice president, the president, the chancellor, the president, the vice president are providing business objectives. So, for instance, for IT, some of those are what drive IT and drive information security. So, for instance, the campus takes credit cards. So we would want to be we need to be PCI DSS compliant. If we're not PCI DSS compliant and we don't have the controls in place that are compliant to the data security standard for payment card industry, then we could, if we have a breach, we could be found negligent and incur fines. So that's one way of that's one example of alignment to the business objective of the university, because the university does need to collect credit cards for payment of fees, student fees, and that sort of thing. Did that answer your question?
Well, sort of, but it's, again, you're going to the business side. You know, it seems like the business side is taken care of, but I wonder how you take care of the academic side.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's a real conflict here, just in simple things like in all of these rooms we have these little Macintoshes that IT has secured, and they've secured them in such a way that it probably works really well with the business side. But in the academic side, when I turn on that machine and boot it into Windows, and it takes 15 minutes for it to boot, that's very contrary to the fact that I have to teach a class. Mm-hmm. And but it might work really well for the business side. And so I guess my question is, how do you do the balance of having to secure and having to be in a real-time environment where people have to teach?
We get feedback from you, and then we feed it into our IT organization and find out what we can do to fix that. That's an example of it. So thank you, and we will feed that in. And what's your name?
Geo Watts. I mean, I'll be having lunch with you later.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Do you work with like state governments or any public institutions, anything like that?
Well, Sonoma State is a state institution, and it's a public institution.
Or say nonprofit even?
And it's a nonprofit.
There's a business side of the school though.
There's a business side to any school, any nonprofit even. So Kaiser's nonprofit. Kaiser Hospitals is a nonprofit organization. The profit organization is actually the Kaiser Permanente Doctors. I forget what they call it. Kaiser Doctors organization. That's the for-profit portion. The non-for-profit portion is the Kaiser Hospital. Huge amounts of money go into that, and it's nonprofit. They don't show a profit from one year to the next. Everything goes, all the money goes into the organization and is spent there on a yearly basis. And hopefully to the best of the ability to increase the ability to teach and provide the main goal of the university, which is educating students.
So I'm just kind of interested in, you said the university collects credit cards, so how does that process work? Do we actually store credit cards on a server here, or is that all like outsourced, or like, you know, what do you process numbers and stuff like that?
I couldn't tell you.
Just wondering.
Okay.
I'm just kind of curious, where are you in, like, what's your title here at school? Do you work with IT? Do you work with?
I work with IT.
You're in the IT?
Yes. I'm an information security analyst. Yeah.
Along the lines of what Tia mentioned, one of the things that's different, I think, at a university than in a business is individual faculty have a lot of information on their own personal computers in their offices, sometimes sensitive information, you know, student IDs and things like that. And I thought of this when you were talking about training. One of the things I've learned over the years is that people seldom think about backups until it's too late. And so how do you go about training, in this case, faculty, that they need to make backups?
I'm not sure what I believe there's a process for that in IT. You would have a server there. Now, as far as backups, like tape backups or backup to USB or something like that, I believe there is a web page on IT that gives that information.
But it's kind of the faculty member has to be motivated to go.
Yeah, there's not just one thing that says back up all your important data, click this button, yeah, or this icon. I don't think there is anything like that. But you're considering that would be a good idea to have something like that. Is that true?
Well, I think that I think it might be good for IT to take a more proactive approach to telling the faculty, especially in other departments. I think, well, I have to say I don't think computer science is that good, you know, ourselves, and knowing that we should be backing up. That's been my experience, not just here on this campus, but other organizations I've worked with.
Yeah.
I had a couple of years ago, I had somebody come to me with, you know, to consult with them on backup issues, and that was after they had lost a bunch of data, of course.
And that's an interesting, yeah. And getting back to the academic side, it's one of the things that I think information security, there's a lot that can be done there. to help the instructors and the students.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.